Our next speaker is Mr. Suraj Dandeniya. Suraj Dandeniya is a known figure in the migration sector, of course. He is the current chairman of Foreign Employment Agency Private Limited, and he is the chairman of several other private sector organizations such as Merck Stop Private Limited, Arabian Motors, and chairman of Spares Hub International Private Limited, and chairman of Fields Vocational Institute. He is the former chairman of Association of Licensed Foreign Employment Agency Private Limited, which is called ALFIA, and former vice president of Badminton Asia, former president of Sri Lanka Badminton, and tournament director Cricket World Club, and former CEO BOI Northwestern Province. So I think he's the best person to talk on the next topic. I will call upon Mr. Suraj Dandeniya to go ahead.
First and foremost, let me thank the OPA President Dulit Pereira, President-elect Mrs. Ruchira Gunasekara, General Secretary Engineer Upali Jayawardena, members of the OPA, Chairman this session Mr. Sujiya Dahanayaka, members of the head table Susanta Kulasekara, Mr. Priyantha Fernand. I'm not going to make a presentation today, as Shanta made all the presentations that are necessary on the foreign employment. So you'll have more time on this now. My association with the migrant workers and foreign employment began way back in the late 80s. I'm happy to say that we have come a long way. During the latter part of the 1970s, the movement of migrant workers to the Middle East countries commenced. In 1985, the process was regularized by a parliamentary act, and the Foreign Employment Bureau came into existence. The Middle Eastern boom brought in unprecedented and unseen growth of wealth, especially to the village folks whose lifestyles changed for better, opening new vistas to overcome long periods of domestic hardship. Though we downtrod the housemaids, unfortunately, people forget to recognize the reasons for their option to seek foreign employment. I might not be wrong if I say it was mainly due to the failure of the state to provide them with suitable education and employment opportunities. Needless to say, the migrant workers have been the backbone of influx of foreign exchange into this country for well over 4 decades. As we all know, the main reason for the present economic crisis could be partly attributed to the non-remittance of dollars through the normal banking channels. And I think Shanta showed many of these reasons. Although various theories can be brought in by people who matter, the bottom line is that a set of unforeseen, unheard personnel had managed to convince the migrant workers to divert their remittance through unofficial channels. We were caught unaware of this. Were the banking officials taken off guard, or have they taken the migrant workers' remittances as easy cash? They took them for granted. Be that it may be, the end result has been bitter and lengthy for all of us as Sri Lankans. We know the pathetic situation that we are in right now. It has brought to the focus the importance and the value of foreign remittances earned by the migrant employees living away from home in faraway countries, enduring severe hardship that we can't even imagine. The Sri Lanka's main forex owners were the tea, rubber, coconut. That forex was sufficient for an absolute closed economy that prevailed in the country from 1970 to 77. From 1977 onwards, the change was so drastic that only the people who saw the effect in real life would remember the changes that took place, opening doors for new Sri Lankans to be influxed with foreign consumable items. Not to forget the Mercs, the BMWs, the Prados, the Rolex watches, the Gucci's and the Louis Vuittons. Was tea, rubber and coconut foreign income enough to satisfy the wild needs of the newly rich Sri Lankan elite? No. At that moment, it's the housemaids in the late 70s, 80s and 90s brought in much needed extra dollars to cater the newfound fancy lifestyles I spoke about before. Who sent these dollars to us? When the human expectations did not materialize in this motherland as they had hoped, with their limited education access, most who had probably not even crossed the provincial border opted to cross international borders and mainly travel to the Middle East as housemaids. And that we failed to appreciate the sufferings and the tears behind these dollars. Had we understood that then we might not be in this situation today. Let me say something. I call it the anthem of the migrant workers. වැඩ කරලා ඉවර නැමෙද දෙවියනේ මොකටද මා දුප්පත් වී ඉපදුනේ වැරදුනාම කෝටු පාර වදිනවා බඩු කැදුනොත් පඩියෙන් අඩු කරනවා දන්නේ කවුද තමන්ගේ දුක මිස තමන් කන්නේ බොන්නේ වැඩකට යන එන ගමන් වෙහෙස වෙලා රෑ 12ට ඇලවුණා උදේ පාට මායත්මා පිපදුණා. That is what the suffering they went through to send all these dollars for us to be in this position today. We neglected them. We took undue advantage out of them. But their remittances not only brought us happiness and comfort to their own kith and kin, but to every other Sri Lanka through their endeavors. While we enjoyed their forex, some of their families broke apart. Did we care two hoots about them? No, we did not. You can tap to your own heart and find out all the answers, whether we have really looked after them. Poverty drove them to the brink of desperation, so much so to leave their loved ones. Some who had never ever got into a car drew the courage to go to an unknown destination and live with unknown families. They did not even speak the same language. Their cultures were different. Their outlook was totally different. Their food was different. Their dress code was absolutely frightening. Not even in their wildest dreams did they ever dare to see this in their first sight when they got off the plane. Some of these migrant workers did not want to get out of the airport. They were so scared. They had left their families. We didn't have telephones then. They couldn't speak to their loved ones for months and months. But they yet sent us those dollars. From their little mud hut, which had no supply of water, electricity, proper sanitation, they were all of a sudden lost in these huge Arabic palaces. The scars of the children growing up without their mother and father cannot be measured by the amount of foreign currency earned and the goodies sent from abroad. Can you ever dare to imagine the psychological effects that they had to undergo while enduring a change of such an environment? I don't think none of you have faced that. We have been fortunate enough to have a lifestyle of such. For the state, it was easy pickings. Banks had Christmas every day as their profit margins soared into billions. The migrant workers are humble, innocent. They had no one to speak behalf of them. We took advantage of them while every forest income business at one time or the other received immense benefits. Duty-free vehicles, tax breaks, you name it, whatever is it. All these big business houses had the courage to go and talk to the ministers. They went and represented that and said, we brought this, we brought that. Huge benefits. But do we dare to think what the migrant workers get? Absolutely nothing. The only thing that they got up to very recent times was $1,500 duty-free allowance when they returned home. Is the good Lord punishing us for taking advantage of these downtrodden people today? I think yes. Did we give enough attention to the welfare and the safety of their families in Sri Lanka? Was it sufficient what our missions abroad did for them? In many instances, they were thrown out of our own embassies. I have seen it with my own eyes. Some were lashed. Some were put in jail. We had no representation to them. Rizana was hanged. What did we do? We just stayed. We never spoke about them because the dollars are freely flowing in. Successive leaders of this country, the central bank officials, banking experts, and top-class economists from top-class doctorates from around the world should be ashamed. They failed to realize and appreciate the migrant workers' dollars. Moreover, the Sri Lankan society and the responsible officials did not recognize the social impact, the tears and the abuse of the migrant employees who had to really toil day and night. Alas, actually it's a twist of fate. When the wells went dry and the frogs have now come out, now the officials are going begging with a begging bowl behind the migrant workers. Come, please save us, save us, save us, send your money, send your money. We are all suffering. We stayed in petrol queues for days and days. For me, that's attribution for what we did to them. We as professionals, we could not look after them. Yet the authorities are not realized that they are not the same uneducated migrant workers in the 80s and the 90s. They have become smarter. They are more educated. They have more modern technology. The ordinary Undial man is smarter than all the doctorates. Who does the migrant worker yet believe? Do the migrant worker believe the state? Or do the migrant worker believe an unforeseen Undial man? The answer is obvious. Shanta said all this. Well, as far as I'm concerned, things have started to change. Not because of the economists or the treasuries of these officials. I have gone to some of these meetings. They do not want to give 1 cent as a benefit to the migrant worker. Unbelievable if you listen to them. And most of these officials now in high society are people who came from villages. They have lost sanity. They do not know what their parents went through. At the moment, I do not like to talk much about politicians because we have all lost faith in them. But this new foreign employment minister, Mr. Manushananakara, he has the foresight and the wisdom to convince these officials. It was not easy. I have been in these meetings. It took them so much time. And now, finally, we have convinced to give the migrant workers duty-free vehicles, various loyalty cards, and separate immigration counters. Some of the goodies. Most of all, we have a vision now of building district-wise migrant townships, insurance schemes for their families to ensure that their children, education and welfare is looked after on the pipeline. Shanta, it is some of these things that we might be able to contribute the migrant workers to have faith in this country. It's quite positive that if we do the proper marketing, if the banks are more considerate towards them, a Undial man sends money, there's no bank charges like you said. They give 20, 30 rupees more, while the banks will charge everything from them. They go to a bank, they'll have to wait 2-3 hours to get their remittances. They'll ask all these questions. The Undial man will go and give the money to his house. Present day recruiting agents, they get $10,000 every time they have to give a letter to central bank why they got this money. It takes 5 days to take the money out. So we have all these archaic rules, and that is why we are suffering today. That is why we do not have forex. That is why, like Shanta said, Sri Lanka has gone down when all the countries have gone up. And as far as the Foreign Employment Agency, we are trying to send more migrant workers to different countries such as Romania, Japan, Korea, EU, and make sure that their salary scales are much more. In order to conquer these employment jobs in these European countries, our vocational training centers, we have failed. The certificates that we give, and I'm sure most of the engineers are here, are not valid in any other country. They don't take any notice of any of our vocational certificates. Our language barriers and our way of going to work, all those things has to be totally changed. If we send 100 people, 25 people will come back. So we are trying to have a national policy on vocational training centers for international standards. And I think most of these OPA gentlemen can help us on that. My last wish, let us recognize our migrant workers as national assets. Don't look down upon them. I hate to go to airport because my passion is so much when I see the migrant workers trying with their children. And do we at least stop and turn and help them to fill their embarkation cards? No, we don't. We just look at the other way and go away. Those things must stop. We have to correct our past mistakes. We have to shed our egos away. We have to create a system to recognize the value of the migrant workers. We do that, the money will start flowing in. Next time when I make a presentation, these things will completely change. That has to come from all of us. It is the society that must make them confident. It is the society that must look after them. It is the society that we have to look after their families. If we give it to the authorities, we will fail. So as such, my plea, understand the pain that we have and understand the sufferings we go through because they fail to send the money. Unless we appreciate them and make them understand that we have made a mistake and that we look after you, no matter what we do, we still will be in the doldrums and we will have a balance of payments. So thank you very much for giving me this opportunity, and I hope my speech will make some sense for you all to think about our migrant workers. Thank you.
There's a message. Understand the sufferings they have. This is the time for leaders and officials of our country to look after our migrant workers who sent us dollars to make our lives more comfortable. That is the message given by